Eric. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Sherry. Glad to be here.
So happy that you're here too, and happy to be getting into the conversation for anyone who is suffering from chronic back pain or I believe any other sort of chronic debilitating pain. This is going to be the conversation for them. And I know that we just connected recently, and I'm not sure that you're aware of my story, but this is a very important conversation to have, especially on my journey. I was struck by a car when I was 16. I ended up damaging my spine. I ended up having two back surgeries and actually going down the path of allopathic medicine to really help me restore function and mobility and of course to overcome pain. And so we're about to get into a very interesting conversation. I think a conversation that we need to have, something that most people don't really know about. And you are a stem cell recovery person from back pain. And so I've never really put those two together. So before we start, Eric, welcome again to the show. And maybe what we could do is just start off by sharing your story and how you actually came across stem cell as a mode or modality for you to overcome back pain.
Yeah, certainly, Sherry, and happy to be here. Glad to share the story and add some value and share some insights to stem cell recovery. I've been involved in various fitness modalities the past 28 years, from your standard everyday gym to CrossFit to strength and conditioning facilities that are coach-led sessions. And I'm also a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. I've been training jiu-jitsu the past 12 years, more focused on self-defense. So there's a lot of throws, kicks, strikes, and so forth. So there's a lot of high impact there. If you look at everything I've done to my body, and even growing up, my dad taught us to snow ski very early. I raced BMX bikes, right? So I was always out kind of doing something or hiking the mountains or, I was never a kid that just sat in front of a computer, right? So it really just started adding up, and I did some rucking events for an organization called Go Ruck,
Mm.
where we led, it was led by Special Forces cadres, and you did various memorial type services and rucking donations and so forth for the Green Beret Foundation
Wow.
uh, to generate funding for, you know, soldiers of families and so forth, right? And this just really added up. And in the early days, you're taught in fitness, you're taught a recovery as a rest day,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where you're not in the gym, you're not so focused on lifting or doing any kind of heavy modality or running at anything. You're kind of just resting, and that was kind of undefined what that meant, right? And so that's what I did. And anytime I had back pain, I'd pull back a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
you know, 1 or 2 days or whatever it is, or, maybe you rest a day and then you go work on another body part because that was another, you know, direction that you were always guided. If the upper body hurts, work the lower body, right? But and as men, we're kind of hesitant to go to the doctor sometimes, right? And that's not good, right? And but you got to be able to swallow your ego and go get checked out when you really have a continual problem like I did. So 2016 through 2021 on into 2022, the back pain just started really, really getting bad. And I was having trouble sleeping,
Mm-hmm.
which, if you think about recovery, like we were just talking about, sleep is the number one recovery tool anyone has. It's the most research recovery aspect that you could possibly get, right? And when that gets impacted, that was really adding up. I couldn't toss and turn my back,
Yeah.
it just hurt. And, it really just started affecting my career, my relationships, family time. And I was still thinking massage therapy, chiropractic care was the course of action, um, or a rest day,
Right.
right?
Right.
And, it just got to the point where it was unbearable. So I was working with a chiropractor out of Austin, Texas, who actually trained at the same strength and conditioning facility I did. I
Okay.
generally try to work with medical professionals that do some sort of athletic
Mm-hmm.
capabilities, right? In their off time, or maybe as they were moving through their college years, because they're going to understand a little bit more about me.
Mm-hmm.
And this gentleman said, have you heard about stem cells? You ought to look into that,
Hmm.
right? And he said, because what I'm really giving you here is a short-term solution. Like there's no long-term fix for what you have,
Hmm.
you know? So that led me down the path of stem cell research, right? And I think from there, what I did is I seeked out medical advice that was non-traditional. I went to a wellness center in Austin, Texas, um, and it was ran by a former Special Forces Green Beret medic, 18 Delta medic, and he was a PA. And that gentleman I knew was coming from a non-traditional medical background and also had served in, special operations and knew the impact that people put on their bodies at a high level,
Right.
right? Um, and we talked about various recovery methods and we went into discovery of MRIs
Mm.
and found that I had 3 herniated discs,
Mm.
I had 3 compressed discs, I had canal stenosis and
Mm.
degenerative bone disease
Mm.
in my back.
Wow.
So that's what that was the shining light that, I said, something's got to be done
Right.
because I can't keep going forward.
Right. Right. And you were how old at this point, Eric?
49.
Okay. Okay. And just clearly from this diagnosis, it's been going on for a while. And thank you so much for sharing that. And I just actually want to unpack a little bit of what you shared. And I actually want to come back to just really addressing chronic pain and especially just this idea of ignoring it for a while, having it get to the point where now it's keeping us up at night, and then also how to distinguish between chronic pain or what I call real pain and fake pain. And just to distinguish that, real pain is the type of pain that is always there. It is that nagging pain that no matter how much you rest, like you shared, or how many days off that you take, or what position you place yourself in, it is always there and it's keeping you up at night. It is disrupting your life. And anybody who's experienced chronic pain knows that this pain doesn't just affect their body. As you were saying, it affects our relationships, it affects our mindset, it affects our mood, it affects our ability to work. And it is so incredibly debilitating. And I've been there. I can write books about it. And I always joke and I always say, I've had 2 kids, I've given birth twice, and I would prefer to give birth every single day for a month than to ever endure back pain. And that's how powerful it is. And so that is real pain. And what I call fake pain is that type of pain that actually goes away when we stop activity. So that's that burn we get in the gym, or we're going for a run and maybe we have a cramp, but then the moment that we stop, it goes away. And so if we're able to distinguish between these two pains, it makes it easier then to take action and then also know when to really address the problem and then go seek out professional advice. So I love that you shared that. And just coming back to that, I'm curious because you said that you started to experience this in 2016, but were there signs before? I know you're a very active dude. You're in crazy, amazing shape, and you've been involved in a lot of different types of activities that required physical effort, that required the use of your body. And so when did that actually start? When did you actually feel that back pain actually start to become this thing that you were managing on a regular basis?
Yeah, it was definitely prior to 2016, but it was very infrequent.
Right.
I think the crossing, the gray line was 2016 through 2021.
Mm.
I was really stepping up my physical activity and, putting a lot more pressure on my skeletal system. And it just added up at that point, right? And, early on, prior to 2016, it was short-term pain. It would go away. It would somehow get resolved unknowingly because I didn't know enough about recovery. I wasn't really using, foam rollers, bands,
Right.
any types of small level resistance on, building up the core area and things like that. So I think it was always there, but it just wasn't, I think at some point it just felt like a dull iron, a hot iron was always on me,
Right.
and I couldn't get away from it,
Right.
you know, and it just kept getting worse.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's what's really interesting to state is that when there's this condition or this thing that we have that goes away and keeps coming back and goes away and keeps coming back, I would say that is the first time the body actually starts to give you signs and signals. And by the way, as I say this, I'm going to say that was my story too. And when I opened up my first CrossFit gym in 2012, I was getting those signals and I was like, no, I'm just going to ignore it. And eventually it started going down my leg, started radiating down my leg. And I ended up in the hospital, transported by ambulance, and had emergency surgery on my back 2 days later. So the warning signs are there, and I do want to point that out. And then the other thing I really love about your story and what you said, and I could not agree more, is to work with a doctor or a professional who also does sports. And I'm curious for you, Erik, why was that important in your journey?
Well, what I've seen in the past is medical professionals really couldn't relate to what I did in terms of health and fitness, right? And it was always an immediate pull back very hard from what you're doing until I tell you you can go do these various fitness modalities again, right? But when I look at this person, they're not fit and healthy, right? No disrespect in any ways because they have a different level of education than me, but you know, I want to be able to resonate with someone that is pushing their body to some boundaries that maybe it's designed or not designed to do, right? And get some honest real-time feedback, right? And then it's really time to listen when someone that has a CrossFit background or a strength and conditioning background or maybe played football or soccer, throughout their college years says you need to pull back,
Right.
right?
Right.
I think that's really valid at that point.
Right.
But I, honestly, it's not easy to find medical professionals that have these backgrounds, right? Because it's not typically not in their bio when you look at them through, various insurance companies, when you're looking for network resources and whatnot that are within your insurance policies.
Right.
You almost have to call the front desk and ask,
Right. Right.
hey, what is this? Has this doctor ever done anything outside of,
Right.
in terms of fitness, right?
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah. And that's really important to state because and again, so respectfully, I mean, I both my parents are doctors or were doctors, and my brother's a doctor, and so I have mad respect for doctors in general, but I'll also say that doctors are doctors of medicine. And so when we take nutrition advice or training advice or maybe even injury management advice from them, I'm not saying that that is not the best advice. However, there are other professionals who are really focused and have studied in that area, and they can likely guide you in maybe a more powerful way. I treated somebody this morning. I had a client this morning. He was just telling me the story about how the greatest time that he really felt the strongest in his life and he was the most fit and most connected with his body was when he was doing the insanity program. And then he went to go see the insanity program, and then his doctor said to him, have you ever seen like the people who do that type of program? Like they're in their 20s and here you are in your 40s, because he had gone to see the doctor saying, oh, I think I pulled a muscle somewhere. And so that completely discouraged him. So he
yep.
stopped training, right? And now, as we were having this conversation today, he's like, I think that was the worst advice I ever got. And I was saying to him, well, the first time that I went to see a doctor for my back pain, I was told to stop all exercise, to only resort to light walking on a treadmill. And it was at that moment, Erik, that I experienced the most back pain, because I went from training all the time and training every day. I was 16 years old. I was in sports. I was in team sports and varsity sports, to suddenly doing zero, nothing, lying down. And now I had back pain. And so by the time I had my second back surgery, my doctor that actually was treating me was also a cyclist, and he also did jujitsu. And he gave me very different advice. He said, Sherry, lift no more than 80% of your body weight. And at this point, I had 2 back surgery, double partial laminectomies. So on my 2 lumbar spines, L4 and L5, there's a small piece of bone that's missing. And instead of him telling me, don't ever exercise again, don't ever lift again, he said, don't lift more than 80% of your body weight. Relax on the impact and start cycling. And then I started cycling, and then I signed up for an Ironman. And so that was the best advice. And how different is that? Because we know that the less that we do, the more pain we're going to have. And the less that we do, the more we atrophy. And we're actually we're actually positioning ourselves for maybe even becoming more vulnerable for another injury. So I love that you share that. And now let's come back to maybe that part of the story where you decided to seek out an alternative way to treat your back. And what I'm curious about is just that sense of bravery that you decided to maybe try something different, try something that nobody was talking about, nobody had tried, because we have all these other ways. We could have gone down the back surgery route, we could have done a spinal fusion, but I'm curious why you made that decision at that point.
Yeah, after getting some guidance and direction from my chiropractor about taking a look at stem cell therapy, I went on a deep dive because I'm a systems engineer, by day, and in corporate America, I designed supercomputers to solve the world's most challenging problems. So that was the reason I went to the wellness center
Mm.
in Austin that was ran by the Special Forces medic, right? And they did stem cell treatment and putting together a plan, but I also said there's more to it, right? And I started doing some research. There's stem cell clinics in Panama. There's stem cell clinics in Medellin, Colombia, and Tijuana now.
Mm.
And all of these countries at a government level have fully approved stem cell development, research, and applications that are at a really, really high level to apply to people,
Hmm.
right? And I started really taking a look who, if I was to really work with one of these clinics, who's the best at working with backs, who has a proven track record of working with backs. Because Sherry, as you know, a back's sensitive,
Mm.
right? And it's the core of your skeletal system in many senses, right? It just throws everything out of alignment if it ain't right. And the last thing you want is some incorrect procedures done, right? So what I found with this firm in Medellin, Colombia, is BioAccelerator. They specialized in backs, and
Mm.
they had a ton of research. They had a ton of customer testimonials on their YouTube channel, and athletes were going there.
Wow.
High level executives and UFC fighters, right? And of course, money's not an option or an objective at that point, right? For a lot of pro athletes, but you know, I said, okay, I'm going to put money to the side, and what can regenerative medicine do for my condition, right? And I went on a research effort. I read a book by Dr. Neil Riordan. He runs a stem cell institute in Panama. He has a clinic in Dallas. But what with the clinics here, generally you can get stem cell therapy, but you don't necessarily know the quality you're getting and maybe the amount you're getting. And without the FDA's full approval, it's it's just not totally blessed, I guess you could say, at a medical level for proper development and application, right? And there's also some clinics making some audacious, pretty, far outside claims that, in order to sell some of these services. But, there's also options to get my stem cells pulled out and put in a centrifuge and spun up and get treated and put back in me. But, you know, I didn't want 49-year-old stem cells or 48, whatever age I was at the time, right? I'm like, I want new stem cells. I want the stem cells from the beginning of life, which is from the umbilical cord, right? I said, why not? If I'm going to do this, go all in. And, the gentleman running the wellness center, he said, I will review any plan that comes from any clinic globally with you. It's just to, get you, rest assured and maybe my blessing on it. So I worked with the clinic in Medellin, and what they did is analyze my MRI
Mhm.
and looked at my condition, the 3 herniated discs, the compressed disc, canal stenosis, and everything. And we had some very deep dive conversations, and they felt they could really help me,
Mm.
right? And knowing that stem cells can repair tissue, repair bone, repair cartilage, that was what I was after. And in my case, I was a bit more fortunate because I was already in shape and I didn't have any surgeries,
Mm.
right? I wasn't overweight. I wasn't showing up to the clinic in a wheelchair, right? Now, that doesn't say if anyone's already has these scenarios to, pull back. But in my case, that made the doctors feel fairly confident that I would see a good amount of success rate.
Mhm.
Now, if you say what's success rates? Well,
Right. Yeah.
just with any surgery, a high end of success is 80%,
Mhm.
right? So you're probably not going to get told any more than that with the stem cell therapy, right? But based on that, I just went on a deep dive analysis. And I was faced with a lot of optimism from friends, family, and even medical professionals, right? They said, well, what are you doing? This is crazy. You're doing stem cell therapy. No one, it's not proven.
Mm.
And plus you're leaving the Colombia. I mean, you're leaving the country to Colombia, right? That sounds dangerous. You don't even know about the clinic you're going to. I
Right.
was like, well, you know what? It's dangerous. It's just staying in the situation I'm in,
Absolutely. And doing
you
nothing.
know,
Yes.
and it getting worse.
Yeah. Wow, that's so powerful. And this just reminds me of just the naysayers, right? All the things and the conversations that we hear before we're about to try something new, right? It's anytime we're facing uncertainty. All of a sudden we start to hear people telling us that this is not the best idea. And so again, why did you feel so brave to just go for it even though people around you were really implanting doubt in your mind?
I felt confident in my research. Plus, I had a US medical professional that came from non-US traditional medical training, like the Army. Their special forces medics have the best training in all of the military branches, right? The SEAL teams send their folks over to the Army to the 18 Delta program to get trained, right? And this person was really knowledgeable in the area, has currently doing stem cells treatment here in the US. And, I figured, what are my other options, right? Surgery, just a ton of physical therapy. And I went for it.
Mm.
Was there some hesitation? Yeah, I think in any medical approach, there's hesitation, right? But there was a lot of pre-work I had to do, Sherry, to set myself up for success. So, it's just, you're not going to be able to show up and get, these stem cells injected and everything's going to be better. I mean, that's definitely not off the charts, but there's pre-work I had to do with an anti-inflammatory diet. I had to get rid of chronic inflammation, not acute inflammation from injuries and so forth, but chronic inflammation comes from the source of uh, foods,
Yeah.
right? And or foods maybe you shouldn't be eating, or maybe foods you should pull back on. So that was a plant-forward diet that I was focused on for 3 months. I had to drop all alcohol, drop all coffee, like literally went down to doing almost nothing,
Mm.
in terms of just being boring, in some sense, right? People might go, wow, that just sounds, but here's alternative. Stay in pain,
Exactly. Absolutely.
you know.
That's a no-brainer.
And I felt I owed it to myself because I would say I'm my own first responder. No one's coming to save me.
Yeah.
It's up to me to fix the problem, because I can go out the door. I could tell my friends and family or come over like how much pain I'm in, or go see a doctor, how much pain I'm in. That lasts for a short visit or two, or when your friends and family leave. And guess what? You're on your own sitting there in pain,
Yeah. That's right. That's
you
right.
know.
Hmm. Hmm. So, what has your recovery been like? And how long did that take? And then, how have you been able to come back to sports and use your back? And are you also still experiencing back pain?
Yeah, recovery's been phenomenal. I received 13 total injections, 9 in my back. And while I was there at the clinic, I did my knees, my elbow, and my shoulder
Oh,
because of,
nice.
just the other impacts I've had over time. So 13 total injections, and they were very focused with imagery. The injections went straight into the impacted areas. And it's just a phenomenal experience at the clinic. It's really the first time I had a sports medicine doctor sit down and spend an hour going over all my MRIs
Wow.
and also advising me what types of fitness movements should I be hesitant to do? Should I change? And so forth, right? And that just made all the difference. But there was a fair amount of physical therapy that I did. I actually put the barbell down for 6 months and just did physical therapy. And my biggest fear there was not being able to pick my daughter off the ground when she needed me,
Mm.
you know. And that's a motivator, right? Because in some sort of a fashion, you might think, well, it's selfish. I hurt my back doing all these physical therapy or physical fitness, and you know, now I'm fit, but I'm broken,
Mm.
right? I owe it to not only me to fix myself, but my family.
Yes.
And what we did 1 year after treatment was in April of 2021. 1 year after, we did an MRI, and the clinic that did the MRIs did a cross analysis between the first one and second one. I wrote a report. I handed all that off to bioaccelerator in Medellin, Colombia, and they did their analysis and actually gave me a before and after image of the MRIs. And the herniated discs had fluid back in them,
Oh, wow. Hmm.
which is not easy to do.
Hmm.
There were no more signs of compressed discs. And an even more amazing level of recovery was there's no signs of canal stenosis left,
Wow. I was curious about that one. Mm.
which is unheard of,
Yeah.
here in the US. Um, and really what I had left was inflammation,
Right.
which hangs around the longest.
Right.
And I just recently did an MRI 2 weeks ago, another 8 months after the first one. And we're in the middle of reviewing that right now. I was working with the physical therapist in Austin, Texas, chiropractor, as a matter of fact, and she did CrossFit. And I had her look at the report, and she goes, "Well, I don't really work with people like you. This is, I said, what does that mean?" She's like, "Well, you're in here working on your body, and you're fine. Like I can help you get fine tuned." And I've never even worked or dealt with anyone that did stem cells
Mm.
recovery for their back. And I showed her the report. I said, "What sticks out here?" Right. She said canal stenosis being healed,
Wow.
right? Because she's like, with our medical background, we're trained that doesn't get fixed,
That's right. Hmm.
you know. Um, so yeah, fast forward, it's been a great experience. The clinic is continually working with me to analyze recovery and where I'm at currently. And this is almost 2 years after the fact, right, of the treatment point. And I feel great. I'm moving around, you know, there are some levels of fitness that I do pay attention to. If I'm have any kind of pain, and what the sports medicine doctors advised me on because of my knees, let's not do a 90-degree squat anymore. Let's do a 60,
Right.
right? Because, for example, if you have a load on you at 60 degrees, all muscles are engaged. You've
Exactly.
done enough. You don't need to go to 90.
Right.
Even if there's a coach standing on the side of you screaming at you, you've got a reason not to go to 90, right? And everything's been good. There's almost nothing I don't do in jujitsu. But Sherry, I think now at 52, right? I just turned 52 a few weeks ago. The
Amazing.
ball game is trained for longevity.
Yes. Yes.
So it's a bit of a different game.
Yeah. That's so good. So good. And I've always said that. I mean, my goal for training and the reason why I even started the fitness journey was really to get strong, to be independent, and to avoid that day coming where somebody has to take care of me or help me go to the bathroom or walk up and down the stairs, because I've been there. I had those moments where I needed someone to help me shower and to get dressed. And so that's always been the objective. And I really train in a way where I know now when to back off. And maybe in my younger days it was all about, ass to grass and push yourself to the point where, you're almost about to break and then let off. But now it's so much more intelligent. There's a massive more, sense of honoring my body, which also feels very different every day. My 100% changes every single day. And the more that we can honor that, the more we can actually stay consistent, be flexible, and then actually see results and continue to train long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And muscle powers health.
Mm.
As you get older, the more muscle you have on your skeletal system, the better off you are health wise, especially like you had just mentioned, if you fall and you don't have enough muscle on your skeletal system, it's not going to turn out good, right? But now it's pull back, you know, train 2 to 3 days a week in the gym for more of a full body routine. 2 to 3 classes a week of jujitsu versus it used to be 5 and 6. Um, and if there's some things I don't think I should do in jujitsu, I just don't do it.
Right. Yeah.
It's now it's more about training the mind and keeping the body moving to be around.
Right. Yeah, I love that. So I'm just curious, where did they end up taking stem cells from? Did they end up taking a blood sample and then centrifuging that and collecting that? Or did you, because I know you were talking also about cord blood stem cells, and when my daughter was born, Layla, that's what we did. We collected actually the placenta and we still have that stored. So where did you get the stem cells for that?
From the umbilical cord.
So from
So
the
there's an umbilical cord from a baby boy. Yeah, these are MSC stem cells. They're Wharton's jelly, so they're extracted straight from the umbilical cord and tested and analyzed just for my application. They were reserved for me in a laboratory and, quality controlled, analyzed, and so forth. So they had my name on them the whole time.
oh,
And yeah, that was the goal, is to seek out MSC stem cells from the umbilical cord.
so amazing. Wow, Eric, this is so fascinating. I've learned so much from this, and I hope anyone listening will have hope that maybe there's another method that they can try besides surgery. And so, what is next for you then? As you now have this strong, stable body that's pain free, what are your next plans?
Yeah, I think right now, Sherry, it's to share my knowledge about fitness, nutrition, and recovery options. So I've launched Energized Dad. I'm
Mm.
coaching online, and I'm just helping the everyday person be better, right? It's kind of like, how do you pull back and create the best version of you and then give that person in the world, right? There's so many dads out there that are stuck, and women into, right? You just don't know where to turn. And it's get rid of the vices, get rid of the excuses, and get serious about your health, because that's going to drive longevity. It's going to drive an improvement every day in your own life. And you don't necessarily, the thing about fitness is you don't need anyone else's approval,
Yeah.
right? The results will speak for themselves. You can just go on this mission to improve yourself, and then sooner or later someone's going to go, wow, hey, you look a little different. What have you been doing? What are you working on? you know and that's what I would say is, focus on the daily discipline. And that's really what I want to teach people, is because also you got to show up when you're not feeling good,
Mm.
right? It's just not when you're feeling good and everything's perfect.
Right.
You know, you can't train for that.
Right. Yeah. And I always say that too, our best workouts are the ones that were the hardest to show up for, not when everything was aligned and it was so easy and we had so much energy. And so we have to really honor that and maybe reframe the way that we actually look at our training. So, Eric, this was a beautiful conversation. Thank you again so much for being on the show and for sharing your story. And if someone wanted to reach out to you to learn more about you, where could they go to do that?
Yeah, Instagram's the best place to find me. That's where I put out my everyday work and my routines and just my family life. It's ErikLScott, Erik L. Scott, on Instagram, and easy to connect with me and chat with me. But yeah, that's kind of the process there. Yep.
Amazing. All right, we'll definitely add that to the show notes. Thanks again, Eric. I love this conversation.
Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate it.